So you'll see the Zoom link in your email that we sent out. So for you guys who are here, we're just going to open with a short prayer, and then I'm going to introduce our workshop speaker. Dear Father in heaven, Lord, thank you so much for the privilege of being part of the movement of AYM and all its workings. We know there is a lot of seeking you, a lot of following you, a lot of teaching from the Bible, and there's also a lot of structure that goes behind this. And I just pray that you would guide us as we think about that and learn some new things this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I am not a biased introducer here, but the speaker is my dad. So I'd like to welcome up Mark Guild. Mark Guild he'll tell you a little bit more about some of the experiences he's gotten to have over the years. He's been able to be in the business world and education world for a long time, and he has some pretty awesome things to share with us this morning about teamwork and about working together, about business, about structure. And this is not going to be 5 hours long. It's going to be shorter. We're going to have a break in between, and we're going to have one more, and then this afternoon we're doing canoeing. So hang in there, we'll be good. Let's just give our full attention, take some good notes. There's going to be some good stuff this morning. So thank you so much.
All right, glad to be here. The birthday boy, if you didn't know this, he's 20 today. Did you know that? 20.
Are you singing again?
Well, yeah, but I want to record it. So maybe we'll do it at lunch.
It's live streaming.
Let's do live streaming.
Well, hang on, let me grab my phone. Okay, so this isn't staged at all, is it? We got to stand up here now, so you can see you being embarrassed. All right.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Cameron. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. So his mom and I were actually about 8 years old when we had him, so we were about 28 or so. Just no, ignore the gray hair. Good. All right, so glad to be here with you. Exciting to see a bunch of young people interested in things like leadership and teamwork. So Cameron asked me to talk about, for 1 hour, get all this, right? Teamwork, motivation, marketing, delegating, mentoring in 1 hour. There's about 1 million books written on this stuff and whole degrees about this thing, but we're going to try to cover some of this in 1 hour. We'll get as far as we can. What I want to do is make sure what we do cover you kind of catch really well and not just rush through everything, okay? So just a brief background. He asked me to give you kind of a brief background on my life. So I graduated from Andrews a few years back, and I wasn't a business major. I was actually a French major. I love languages. And shortly in my career, I started figuring out what does that look like for me. I was passionate about business things and leadership things. I worked here at Camp Au Sable for 6 summers in different roles, counseling and waterfront and programs director, so I had some of those experiences. And then I liked languages, loved traveling, and so I put those together with a lot of prayer, and it spoke to me international business. So I ended up going to an international business school in Arizona. It's called Thunderbird. It's not the academy. It's the business school. There's a Thunderbird Business School. It's in Phoenix, Arizona, and at the time was ranked one of the top international business schools. And to go there, you had to speak languages. So I speak 3, French, German, and English. And you have to be interested in international business. And what I wanted to do then is work for a large corporation doing international business. And for me, that was finance and mergers and acquisitions. So kind of helping organizations buy divisions, sell divisions, become more efficient, right? So that's what I wanted to do. And finished my degree. I met my wife about halfway through that program. We got married in Phoenix. And then we ended up moving to Toledo, Ohio. And I joined a Fortune 500 company called Dana. Those of you guys are gearheads, you'll know Dana axles and Dana drive shafts. That's the company, a big automotive supplier. And I did mergers and acquisitions and business development and a few others, and strategy, a few things like that. And then ended up going to another corporation in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where Cameron was born. That was a 2003 timeframe, and did some similar things with that group. That was even a bigger company. A lot of time in Europe, some time in Japan, places like that. And then end up moving to Chattanooga so the kids could be near the grandparents. That's where my parents were, and took another call with another company there for a short period of time. And then we bought our own company. So we bought a company that was failing and rebuilt it. Did that for about 11 years or so. Sold that about 3 years ago. And along the way, while we owned that company, I kept getting a call to go teach at Southern in the business department. And I kept turning it down. Time wasn't right yet. I wanted more experience. If I was going to be a professor, I wanted to be somebody who could go in the classroom with lots of experience, not just do book knowledge, right? So after a while, I finally decided the timing was right. And so I accepted a call there to be a professor for about 7 years. And I thought I'd be doing that going forward for a while yet, but I ended up this past summer, It Is Written, many of you know It Is Written, they called and asked if I'd be interested in joining them to do Director of Marketing and Development. And so I've been there for the last about 8 or 9 months now. So that's a little bit about my background. So what I want to talk to you, first of all, is on teamwork. This organization, AYM, is inherently a team-based organization, isn't it? Team-based and team-based, right? For certain. In fact, if a person is a dominant leader or a dominant figure and doesn't play well with others, it hurts the whole team, right? AYM doesn't grow very well if somebody just kind of walks over everybody else. So I want to start with teamwork. And within teamwork, we can talk about motivation and delegating and mentoring. It kind of all fits together. So that's where I'm going to go for the next 5 or 6 hours. Is that all right? Okay. All right, we'll see how far we get. So I'd like to take the approach of looking at dysfunctions in a team. So this isn't to get negative. We're actually going to see the positive side of the thing. But look at dysfunctions. And the reason why is because almost every single team has some dysfunction or dysfunctions they go through. And to break through and become a really effective team, you've got to get through these dysfunctions or settle them out if they're happening. So I'm going to refer a little bit to a book. This is my favorite book on teamwork. It's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's by Patrick Lencioni. A very simple read, but a very comprehensive read on teamwork. And so I'm going to go through his pyramid of the 5 dysfunctions. And I like this a lot, not only because it's easy to understand, but because I've seen all this stuff. I've been on lots and lots of teams over the years, in corporations, in education, in Camp Au Sable when I was younger, all these kind of things, lots of different teams. And I've seen just about every dysfunction imaginable. And I've also seen what a team looks like when it works really well. So I'm going to give you some examples along the way. All right. So let's suppose you're on a team. You're on a team of horses. Have you ever done a trail ride? Those of you that have been at camp here, maybe other camps, you've done a trail ride, right? You have the lead horse, and then you got all the other horses that follow the lead horse. And you're all riding through the woods and going on a ride. In fact, after a while, they do these trail rides over and over and over again, and the horses that follow are so good at it that they could practically just ride the thing by themselves. I mean, literally, the lead horse goes out, the others just know to follow, right? There's an old saying in business that unless you're in the lead horse, the scenery doesn't change a whole lot. You get that? Does that sound like a functional team to you? Does it sound like a team you want to be on? Where there's the leader, and wherever he or she goes, that's where you go. No, I mean, what kind of team do you want to be on? Help me out. What does it feel good?
Everyone working together.
All right, people working together. Good. What are some other attributes? So we got teamwork, people working together.
Making joint decisions, not just having the leader make all the decisions.
Okay, all right. Everybody's voice is heard, and decisions are made jointly. Are you going to say the same thing?
I was going to say, kind of like you have the individuality and vision. So like everyone has vision and new ideas that are put forth.
Okay, so we have the individuality. I'm repeating me so the people on live stream can hear. We have individuality of ideas, but those come together in a team environment. So we don't get have you ever heard of the idea of a wolf pack mentality? right? That's when everybody thinks the same. Groupthink is another way to put it, where everybody thinks the same, and you think you're doing the right thing, but you don't realize you're not. Maybe you're not because no one is really bringing individual ideas. You get this groupthink going, and sometimes you get going the wrong direction, and that's a mess. Anything else on teams? Encouraging. Okay, encouraging. All right, so nurturing, good. These are all great answers. So that feels like a good team environment, doesn't it? All right, so why aren't all teams like that?
Because of people.
We're dealing with people. That's right, yeah. If we weren't dealing with people, in fact, there's another funny saying in business that, man, if I didn't have customers, I'd have the best business ever. Right? If I didn't have people working for me, all the problems, man, what a great business this would be. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you didn't have customers, if you didn't have people working in the organization, you would have nothing, right? So we're dealing with people. And we all got our own opinions. We all have our own idiosyncrasies. We all have our own psychoses. Now we're all doing that. We're all good. Yeah. So let's look at some dysfunctions. First one, and this is in a triangle, a pyramid, and it is for a reason because they build on each other. So the first one is absence of trust. Absence of trust. Can you imagine working on a team where you don't trust each other? Some of you have probably already seen this one. Have you seen it yet? When I talk about trust, I'm not talking about, oh, I know that so-and-so is going to return in the report on a monthly basis regularly. I know that so-and-so is going, I can trust them to practice the piano, for X number of minutes every day. I'm talking about trusting them and knowing that you can be vulnerable with each other. Vulnerability is a big one here. You can be vulnerable with each other, you can be transparent with each other, and you have each other's back. It's really hard to be in a team and make great decisions if you don't trust the person next to you. If they've got some other agenda, they're trying to climb some ladder and they're doing things for their own good and not the good of the team, right? Have any of you seen this yet? Yeah, some of your heads are going up now. You'll see this one. If you haven't seen it, you'll see it soon. Coming to a, I'm sorry? That's right, coming to a team meeting near you. Yeah, it'll happen. Let me just read a short blurb out of here on this topic. As soft as this might sound, this idea of trust, it is only when team members are truly comfortable being exposed to one another that they begin to act without concern for protecting themselves. Okay? As a result, they can focus their energy and attention completely on the job at hand rather than on being strategically disingenuous, I love that term, strategically disingenuous or political with one another. In other words, not bringing their own agenda to the team, right? The agenda is the success of the team, not their own agenda. And so we need to be vulnerable, we need to be open. That can include talking about our weaknesses, understanding what our weaknesses are, being okay with our weaknesses, supporting each other, those types of things. All right. So I wanted to actually, I got a couple examples. I'm waiting on those. So how do you suppose we can build trust in a team? What are some ideas here?
I think the leader plays a big role into that.
Okay.
With just creating an atmosphere in the meetings of trust and also being vulnerable to the teammates, which can invite vulnerability in return.
Okay, so starting with the leader, Anthony says, making sure that the leader is a trustworthy person, is vulnerable, it demonstrates this idea of trust. Absolutely. There is an organization you've probably heard of called Ford, Ford Motor Company, right? So a few years ago, Ford was in trouble, real trouble, back in the early 2000s. They were making cars that weren't the greatest quality, they weren't keeping up on design real well, the profits were suffering, people weren't buying the cars, all these kind of things. And in the automotive industry, probably more than just about any other, when they look for the next CEO, right, the next leader of the organization, they always hire from within. Because people have been in that industry for years and years, so we figured, well, they know the car business, that's who we should have as our next CEO. Well, Bill Ford of the Ford family was chairman of the board, still is, and he decided, I'm going to go outside of Ford and find somebody else, because they can't get the company fixed, and it's going downhill. And so he went to Boeing, of all places, airplanes, and poached sort of poached, asked if their CEO, a man by the name of Alan Mulally, would join Ford. Well, Boeing's a big company. That's a very prestigious job. And Alan Mulally looked at that and he's like, why would I want to go to a company that's not doing well, that's a big mess, and try to rebuild it? And the reason for him is because Ford is an iconic brand, American brand. He says, if I can be a part of rebuilding Ford, I want to be a part of that. So he left Boeing and went to Ford. He tells a story about his first executive, some of his first executive meetings. So he has all the leaders in the room, and he asked them to report on their divisions and the performance of the divisions, and he used a system which is quite known in the executive world of a stoplight. Green if things are going well, yellow if there's some problems but not bad, and red if it's underperforming, okay? So he has 15, 20 of the top business leaders, and he asks them to put together this summary report, and he's going to do this on a regular basis, so this is the first one. And they come into the meeting, and what color do you think everybody's stoplight was?
Red.
No, think for a second.
Green.
Green, right? Self-preservation, right? Everybody, self-preservation. They don't want to show the new boss that they're failing in their division. Everybody was green. Every one of them. And he's like, we're in the tank. We're failing. The stock is way down. We're bleeding huge amounts of dollars. Not profitable. Bleeding, we call red ink, meaning that the company's not profitable. It's losing lots of cash. And we're all green? How can that be? And he said, someone in the room raised their hand. It was actually Ford in Canada. And the guy says, actually, I'd like to take my color back, and we're not doing so well. We've got a problem on one of our models, and this is the problem. And Alan Mulally started clapping. He's like, thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for being transparent. And he said, how can we solve this? And pretty soon someone over here said, oh, we saw that same problem in such and such a place. This is how we solved it. And they started talking and dialoguing. And the next time they came and did the business review meeting, all kinds of colors. There were some greens, yeah, but there's also a bunch of yellows and reds. And they started solving problems. And within a year, just a year or two, Ford had already started swinging dramatically the other direction. And out of that came new models, better technology, the aluminum, or as some of you might say, aluminium bodies for the trucks, right? And Ford was on the right direction. He just retired a few years ago, turned the whole company around, and he did it because he demonstrated, as a leader, transparency, vulnerability, and he lived it every day. I love this guy. I've watched lots of I've read a lot of his materials. I've watched a lot of his interviews. Super genuine guy, always relaxed, always in control. Super good team player. See how it works? Yeah, really good example, right? So trust, building trust. So as you start to think about you as a leader, as a team member in AIM, got to have that trust piece. If we don't have trust, then there's fear of conflict. Is conflict a good thing or a bad thing?
If there's a problem, then there's conflict, and it can turn into a bad thing or a good thing.
All right, so it goes both ways, perhaps, is what I'm hearing, right? So conflict can be good and bad. It's bad when it is conflictual and attacking people. That's bad. There's never a place for that, ever. In a meeting, nothing. Even in your personal lives, if someone gives you a review or some advice and it's attacking, if it's vindictive, it's not acceptable. Don't accept it, okay? If it's constructive criticism or constructive conflict, that's a good thing. And so I kind of describe this as beating up ideas. So you're in a team, and you got ideas. We talked about earlier about individual ideas coming at you, right? Everybody's got individual ideas. If we trust each other, then we can beat up those ideas and know that we're going to be on the same page. It sounds kind of strange, doesn't it, to think we want to have conflict in meetings? If you don't have conflict in meetings, if you're not beating up ideas, you're probably going to end up with a bad idea going the wrong direction. You're going to get this groupthink going on, right? You want to make sure that ideas, initiatives coming out of your meetings are well thought through. Make sense? And you do that by everybody participating, everybody speaking up, no one dominating the conversation. You trust each other inherently. You beat at these ideas. The Japanese, for years and years and years, and actually they still do quite a bit of this, do a tremendous amount of what we call consensus building. Have you ever heard of karaoke? Karaoke? Now hopefully if you've done karaoke, you haven't done it in a bar, right? But that's where it started at. So karaoke started in Japanese bar rooms. You're like, where are we going with this story, right? At AYM. Well, follow me here. The Japanese businessman, is very much attuned to what's going on around them and what the teammates are doing. So much so that during the work week, they'd work ridiculously long hours, and then they'd go out with their colleagues in the evenings to a bar, and unfortunately, they weren't drinking 7-Up, they were drinking sake, and then they would do karaoke. It sounds crazy, right? And so they wouldn't see their families at home much during the week, so I don't recommend that part. That work-life balance wasn't great. But what they were doing, and did for years and years and years, Toyota was built like this, Honda was built like this, some of the big Japanese companies that are really super good quality and that we know real well, were built with this mentality of we're going to build the team at all costs. So what they would do is they'd work during the day together, then they would go to dinner together, then they would drink together, and then they would do karaoke, which naturally comes out of not having inhibitions when you drink, okay? So I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying. So what they did then is they had this team building going on. And so they would completely trust each other. Conflict was in the organization for sure, but was in the way that they would beat up ideas, they talk about situations. If you look back, I'll go back to the automotive industry for a second. If you look back in the 1980s, the Toyota products, the Honda products were just garbage. 70s actually worse. They started turning around in the 80s. Really bad. Super poor quality, fall apart, all this kind of thing. And then Toyota got this idea of doing quality initiative, total quality management, TQM. And they started implementing this in a big way. These teams would work together just 60, 70, 80 hours a week, figuring these problems out, making better solutions, and building better cars. And by the time the late 80s roll around, early 90s, they pretty much took over the market here in the States, just ran right over the US automakers with quality, and now Toyota and Honda are still really, really important automobile companies. Yeah, make sense? So a lot of trust, a lot of making sure ideas work. Anybody been on a team where you're doing this? Not fear of conflict, the opposite. You're actually beating up ideas, yeah? And so you're pushing back on each other, you're talking through things, you're thinking of all the angles, and by the time the meeting is over, you're all on the same page and you're just fired up, yes? Yeah, that's what it should feel like, okay? If we don't trust each other, if we're afraid to have that conflict, then a decision might be made, but it might be one or two people making a decision, the rest of you are like, I don't know if I like that decision very well, and then it doesn't get supported and doesn't go anywhere, or it goes someplace but not the right place. Make sense? So you with me so far? All right, next one. This is building, got to have trust. In a trust relationship, we can have conflict. By the way, conflict can occur also in friendships, relationships, spousal relationships, all these kind of things. Good, healthy conflict, right? Lack of commitment. How do you suppose that might happen?
So first of all, you have the absence of trust. So you start to feel an environment where you aren't as respected. So then you start to lose your own vision. And then you don't want to commit to someone else's vision when they didn't listen to yours.
Yeah, right. So you're not going to be, I'm going to repeat again. So you're not going to be bought into the vision of others if your vision isn't even listened to, right? Is that essentially what you're saying? Yep. Cool. Good. So there's a lack of commitment on your part. Yeah, okay, a team made a decision. The boss kind of ran over us all, and this is the direction we're going, and I want to be on the team. I want to get my paycheck, so I'll sign on to it. But I'm not really committed to it a whole lot. Yeah, it's not such a great thing. There's another little piece here I wanted to read to you. Find it real quick. So the two greatest causes of lack of commitment are the desire for consensus and the need for certainty. Ooh, okay, so this is interesting. The need for consensus and the need for certainty are two of the biggest reasons for lack of commitment. Let's talk about that for a minute, because it sounds like consensus is a really good thing. Doesn't it sound like a good thing? I mean, that's what the Japanese did with a lot of that. When can consensus, you understand what I mean by consensus, right? Everybody on the same page, believing the same thing. How can consensus actually be a problem for commitment?
Them just consenting because everyone else is consenting.
Yeah, I'm just going along with the crowd. I feel I should probably be in with the main group. I don't want to have this thing going on, conflict. I don't want to be seen like someone who's a naysayer, and so I go along, and it's not the strong. I'm not really committed then, am I? Yeah, our team decided to do this, but I kind of didn't really agree with it. But I kind of went along with it. So how committed are you? Not very. That's interesting. How about certainty? How can certainty produce a lack of commitment? This is really counterintuitive for most people. How can I must be certain about something, we must be certain as a team, actually produced a commitment issue? Let me tell you a little story, and then I'll see if you catch on to this. So, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs figured this out very early on. When I'm going to do a technology piece, I'm going to get it to 90% right, and then I'm going to launch it. So it's not 100% right. You can't kill somebody, right? So it's that 90%'s got to be really good, and then I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And we'll fix that 10% in the next rev. That's why we keep having updates on our phones. That's why we keep getting new phones, right? Because if they would have waited to 100% certainty that it's absolutely done correctly, it never launched. Never got it off. Or the competitor would have, and they wouldn't have, right? So now help me with this. With that idea, how can certainty or the need for certainty actually result in a lack of commitment?
Because certainty is not guaranteeable.
I can't guarantee certainty, that's correct. Yeah. So if I'm going to sit there and wait until I'm absolutely 100% certain on something, I'm never going to commit to anything. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, you would think, if I read that to you and said, for fully committed teams, they've got to have great consensus and got to be certain of things, you would say, oh yeah, that sounds right. But if you really think about it, those can actually produce a bit of a lack of commitment. Ooh, which kind of puts us in an uncomfortable position sometimes. Some of us are like 100% certainty in things. Some of us are okay with ambiguity. So there's got to be a bit of ambiguity involved for the teams to really be committed to figuring things out moving forward. I'll let you noodle on that a little bit. It kind of makes the head hurt to think about that a little bit, but that becomes a bit of a truism. All right, so let's continue. And by the way, we're going to come back and talk about how to fix some of these in a minute. Next one is avoidance of accountability. Avoidance of accountability. You know what I mean by accountability? This is willing to hold each other accountable. Now, I can't hold someone else accountable if I don't trust them, they don't trust me. If we're not willing to have a little bit of conflict in the relationship in a good way, talk about ideas, be vulnerable, and if we're not committed, right? So accountability. A team can go through all this, come up with these awesome ideas, but if they don't hold each other accountable to get it done, it's never going to get done. At least not done very well, or it's going to be late, right? Okay, good. Last one, inattention to results. Inattention to results. What do you suppose I mean by that? Inattention to results.
Not really paying attention to results, to work back on the chain of events or circumstances or things that have happened in the lead up that you could change.
It's not being willing to see and consider when you've made mistakes.
Okay, so not considering mistakes or willing to recognize mistakes.
And then on the positive side, if you never affirm, through a tough difficulty, the team arose, got to the place they were wanting to work towards. You never affirm that. There's no reward sensation of, okay, we achieved success that drives us forward. So you're in this constant state of working through conflict and never seeing
Never
the
succeeding.
result.
All right, okay, good. So we're not getting anywhere, right? So in other words, we can have this great trust thing. We can come up with some awesome ideas as an organization. These are things we're going to do as AYM Leadership, whatever, right? We beat those up, and we come up with the key 3 or 4 things that we're going to do as an organization. We were committed to it, rah, 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 we're going to go back to our chapters and make this happen. We're willing to hold each other accountable. Like, maybe somebody in Ohio calls somebody in Oklahoma, and you talk about it. How you doing? Is this going well? Oh yeah, doing great, But if we don't have any goals, if we don't have any deadlines, if there's no reward, or what now?
I said no, there's no reward for reaching them.
Yeah, no reward, there's no end game, it's not like we've got to get this done before we can get this done. If we don't map that out and hold each other to that, inattention to results, in short, we're not winning. And we don't have the desire to win. We may have the desire to win, but we're not actually going to win because we don't know what that end game looks like. We don't hold ourselves to that standard of results. Make sense? So you can kind of see then, anywhere along the line here, if something doesn't happen properly, the whole thing just falls apart. Clearly, if we don't trust each other, I'm not going to, we may come to a decision, but I don't know if I really trust that person if they got the right motives. Got to be able to talk about ideas, look at all angles, all sides of idea. Then we've got to be committed to things. We've got to hold each other accountable, and then we got to have some type of goals. All right, so how about some questions here? We talked a little bit about trust building. How about, what does it take to get past this idea of conflict? Any ideas how we can make this one happen?
I think one idea is to not just shut down ideas, even if I think the team feels like it's a bad idea, because you create this situation where no one's willing to express anything because they're afraid it's going to get shut down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that starts at the top, doesn't it? So culture has to be established. Leadership has to establish a culture of being able to have these conversations.
Where ideas aren't bad ideas.
That's right.
They're just less effective.
There are no bad ideas. In fact, you can do brainstorming here in the next session. A key component to great brainstorming is there are no dumb or bad ideas. Right? Every idea has got to be put out there. Because if anybody thinks, well, I don't know if I should open my mouth because that might be a bad idea, you're not getting their best. They're not committed. And you want everybody in, because sometimes the craziest idea might spur another idea that becomes the best idea. Yeah. All right, so what kind of thing, good. What kind of things can we do then to promote commitment?
Involve as much as possible the specific ideas of the individuals that would be committed to that certain thing. Because if they have personal investment in the ideas, they're much more likely to enjoy and have fun and put more of themselves into being committed to that thing.
All right, this is good. So he's saying the people that come up with some of these ideas, empower them to see them through. That's not even in the book, by the way. Good one, Anthony. We'll have to write the author and tell him to put that in there, right? I've seen this before in real life. I remember, in fact, this just happened a couple years ago at the university. We were in a faculty meeting, and the dean was asking for an idea how to solve a problem we had with, I think it was with the curriculum. I can't remember exactly what it was now. And I put my hand up. I had an idea. And I gave my idea. And it got beat up a little bit. And then finally everybody's like, oh, that's not bad. And we modified it a little bit. Then you know what she did next?
Give it to somebody else.
No, she gave it to me. And they're all laughing at me. That'll teach you to speak up next time. So I got a sign to see it through. Well, that's actually not a bad thing, right? It shows that faith is given to the person that brings up that idea. So that can be a real motivator. Good. Another thing we can do is maybe set some deadlines. Another one is scenario planning. Scenario planning. Have you guys done this yet at all? You might do this as you continue to evolve and mature as an organization. You do some scenario planning. Like maybe you've got I'm just making this up. Maybe you have a conference and you're trying to figure out how many people are going to come to the conference, what the budget's going to be, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's fear. Well, what happens if people don't show up? Or what happens if I have too many people show up? Well, maybe you run some scenarios. And maybe you do like the most realistic case. And then maybe you do a blue sky case where you have like twice as many people come. Or maybe, and then what I call the doom and gloom case, like you have just a few people show up. Can you still run the conference successfully in the black or whatever your goals are for the conference? And if the answer is yes, that takes a lot of fear out of it, doesn't it? Okay, a lot of fear out of it. You can really commit to something then if you know what the parameters are for success. Okay, scenario planning. Good organizations do great scenario planning. It doesn't have to be a bunch of it. It doesn't have to be 20 scenarios. It can be literally just 3, What we think is going to happen based on our research, what would happen if this thing, like I call it 10x, like 10 times larger than we expect it to be? Can we do it? And sometimes you can't. Like for instance, maybe you have a business and you've got a plant and you're making something, and if that all of a sudden you get 10 times more orders than you expected, can you actually produce all the orders? There are stories of companies going bankrupt because they got way more orders than they ever expected and couldn't build them in time. They couldn't get it paid fast enough. It's a crazy scenario, but it actually can happen. And then the other one, of course, is what happens if you're going to start a company, organization. Where's my baker guy? He's outside, okay. So Mr. Bautista starts his bakery, and they get fewer orders than they at the beginning. They're doing it with your family too, aren't they? So the Weavers and the Bautista start his bakery, and maybe the orders come in slower than originally expected. They eventually ramp up. Can we survive that period of time? Well, scenario planning will help you understand that. Same thing with AIM as you start looking at maybe chapter expansion, whatever it is, okay? Scenario planning. And that helps you then understand how committed can we be to this thing. All right, good. What can we do to help with accountability? You hinted at it earlier, one of them. Goals and standards. Okay, so we have some type of goals and standards. And another thing we can do here is a review process. I think you're already doing some of this in your regular meetings. Yeah. I think you are. I think I hear Cameron sometimes down in his room on conference calls, and they're reviewing things. Yeah. So you're reviewing stuff. When I worked in one company, for instance, we had what was called a monthly business review meeting, a BRM. And in the business review meeting, it's kind of like the one with Ford, Alan Mullally, where every month the leaders would come in, talk about what's happening in their area, and good, bad, what's going good, what's not going so well, review meeting. In my own company, our business that we owned, I would meet with my production staff every morning except Friday at 7 o'clock in the morning. We start at 7 in the morning. And we'd meet for about 7 or 8 minutes. That was it. Every day, though. And during that time, it was real quick. What are our major hitters for the day? What are the things we're working on today? So we're all kind of aligned around our objectives. And then, are there any problems, any bottlenecks, any issues that we need to break through today? And how can I help do that as a leader of the team, leader of the organization, right? That's this. Okay. Whether it's daily or monthly, whatever it is. All right, last one. What can we do then to make sure we don't have inattention to results?
Set up some type of reward system.
Okay, it could be a reward system. Yep. Now, I don't know what that looks like in AIM necessarily. We're not, trying to make a bunch of money here and stuff like that. We're not trying to necessarily all be promoted to the next level, but some type of incentive system. It could be team-based. It may not be individual-based, it may actually be team-based. We have some type of metrics. Metrics is a fancy word for goals, or how we measure goals, rather. Okay? I'm just going to, again, making this up a little bit. Let's say then as AIM Leadership, you've got 7 or 8 chapters now, and maybe by the end, in 3 years, you do some scenario planning, some visioning. Where do we want to look like 3 to 5 years from now? And we say, we want to have X number of chapters and X number of participants in AIM, right? So you can set some metrics for yourself. And so let's say by 2025, we're going to have 16 chapters, whatever. right? And so now you've got something you're working towards, and you're holding yourselves accountable to that. Make sense?
Yep.
Any questions? I have another story here, but any questions along the way here? All right, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything on my notes here. I'm going to come back to a biblical story in just a minute, but one more story of what this looks like in real life when it works really, really well. So when I was at Eaton Corporation, I was on the leadership team of a division. I was a director of marketing and product development. So I had a bunch of product development people and engineers. We made products. We made switches that go on the cab, the dashboard of all kinds of things. So Freightliner, Peterbilt, Kenworth, International Trucks, Caterpillar equipment, John Deere equipment, Case New Holland equipment. That's all Eaton switches on the dashboards, right? Eaton, E-A-T-O-N.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Eaton. They also make transmissions for trucks. I was in the electrical group that did the switches. And I was there for about 3 years. And the business unit manager, or the leader of the group, general manager, a really hard driving guy. He'd come from another company that was really known for driving metrics and long work hours and all that stuff. And he was a hard driving guy. Tough guy. I learned more under him in 3 years, though, than anybody else, even though it was sometimes pretty brutal and pretty long hours. But we did this really well. Our team was fantastic. We trusted each other inherently, including him. Very vulnerable. We knew each other's weaknesses. We did some assessments. We knew our characteristics of each other. We would go off-site for a week every year. When I say off-site, I mean like to some nice little resort or something. Turn off the phones and computers and just be all in on going over strategy. And we eat together, we talk together, the whole thing. So we trust each other inherently. And that was led by him as the leader. It's good. We beat up ideas all the time. And there was no bad idea. Every idea should be on the table, and let's talk it over. And we were committed then to getting things done. And we held each other accountable. Sometimes it was painful. We held each other accountable. We did the red light, green light, yellow light thing every month together. And if there was something not going right, we would talk it through and we'd help each other fix it. So we knew, even though we were on really tight timelines, which is this part here, goals and timelines, we knew that we're all in it together. And that if one person failed, it was going to bring the whole team down. And no one wanted to be that person. So it's highly committed, highly competent group of people. And in a 3-year time period, we grew that organization by almost 3 times. So it was great. It was a really exciting place to work. Now, the story didn't end great. After about 3 years, our beloved business unit manager was looking for his next promotion and decided to make a move that many of us didn't agree with, strategic move, and asked us to buy into it, even though we didn't agree with it. And I still have a high degree of respect for him, but at the same time, it started to erode this whole scenario. But for 3 years, man, it was just, I've never seen a team work so great before. So, which leads to a good lesson, that this can fall apart at any time if we don't make sure that we practice, continue to practice these things. All right, let me ask you a question. So, how about some teams that were in the Bible? Any teams you can think of?
Joshua?
Oh, yeah, we should talk about Joshua this morning. Yeah, so Joshua's team. Good. Joshua sounded like a leader that probably fairly untrustworthy, right? Didn't really, pretty lousy guy? No.
We have the opposite, which was King Saul,
Yeah.
and those working around him.
Oh,
He was kind of
yeah.
that leader.
Yeah.
Checked him
Okay.
out all the time. Didn't really motivate
And
him.
everybody
Yeah.
had to work outside and around him.
Yeah, actually yesterday we were talking about how when he was supposed to be leading in battle, he was sitting under a pomegranate tree.
Okay, so talking about King Saul,
Yeah.
opposite of Joshua, leading from underneath a pomegranate tree. And not leading very well either, right? Okay.
Everybody else moved the country forward with him just kind of driving.
Yeah. Which, by the way, brings up an interesting motivation discussion. So not King Joshua, Joshua led, motivation was what was the motivation for Joshua's team?
To go into Canaan.
Yeah, we were motivated around the goal of what God told us was going to happen, and we believe it, and we were motivated to get it done. They could see their part in the big picture. God's saying, that's your land, but you got to go take it with me, right? And they did. Saul, people were motivated out of fear. Not out of love, like Joshua, but out of fear, which is a really bad place. You don't want your team motivated out of fear. But so many leaders, you see this all the time. It still happens today. Leaders think they get to a certain position. I'm the leader. I'm the grand poobah, right? Yeah? And everybody's going to bow and respect what I have to say, and people serve them out of fear. And so it looks like you're getting stuff done, but you might get some stuff, but you're not fulfilling the greater commission of what the organization could do. Not at all. Okay, there's some hands over here. Yes?
I have two. David and his mighty men, and then Jesus and the disciples.
Okay, David and his mighty men. David was a pretty effective leader, wasn't he? Yeah? He had some issues sometimes, you know.
But he was vulnerable.
I was going to say, David was vulnerable. God called him a man after my own heart, which is crazy because David had some pretty bad, very public and very bad personality traits, right? But he was willing to be vulnerable and he was willing to ask forgiveness, right? So he wasn't perfect. None of us are. Yeah, good. David is mighty. So he ended up being a really effective leader, didn't he? He also did something very interesting. Remember, he had a couple opportunities to take out King Saul. And he didn't. His men said, there he is. He's right there. He's laying. He's sleeping right there. What was David's response? Do you remember?
He would lay his hand on the God's anointed.
Yeah. Who is it? Who am I that I should harm the anointed of the Lord? Right? So in him was this great character. He had vulnerabilities and stuff. I think we could probably march right up this one, Lydia. I mean, trustworthy. There's conflict in his organization. You know, they talked about ideas, but they were committed. His band of mighty men, very committed. They held each other accountable. You know, they're driven by results. And it wasn't to take the throne. It was to do what was right. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about disciples. I want to go there. Disciples. How do the disciples, just as a whole team, how do they fit this? I've thought about this a little bit. I want to see if anybody thinks the same way I think on this one. Not that you can think differently, I'm just saying.
I would say not very well. They depended quite a bit on Christ.
Okay, all right. So early on, we saw a lot of dependence on Christ himself and not so much taking leadership or charge of things. Okay, good. You can say something?
There was quite a progression. They were actually much better after Jesus left.
Okay, I was hoping somebody was going to say that.
And they didn't understand the purpose. They didn't understand where this group was supposed to be going. They all wanted to be at the head of this group. They were all fighting and vying to be the vice president.
Yeah.
And nobody understood the purpose, and what little purpose they did understand, nobody took commitment. Nobody committed themselves to it.
Okay, so let's repeat this for the people that are online. Let's think pre-crucifixion. Pre-crucifixion disciples. They all wanted to be vice president. They had conflict, but not a good conflict, right? They had personal ambitions and not team ambitions. Probably didn't trust each other a whole lot.
Not if you were vying against each other.
Right, they were vying against each other. I mean, you can see how this whole pyramid was just a disaster for the pre-crucifixion disciples.
The team had a lot of cultural differences.
Team had cultural differences. They didn't really understand each other very well. They held those against each other. They didn't really want to. Right? They did not want to know each other very well. You know, Peter's off doing his thing. Judas is doing his thing. A whole bunch of them, we don't even know what they're doing, right? Because the Bible doesn't talk a lot about what they're doing. James and John calling down thunder. Mom's going to bat for them to be sitting up in heaven next to the Lord himself. I mean, remember, this is the same John that wrote John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and Revelation. I mean, that guy went under a serious change. It's post-resurrection, but it's almost post-ascension, isn't it? Yeah, post-crucifixion, post-resurrection, post-ascension. What did that group of disciples look like? Now, they replaced one with Matthias or Matthias, however you want to say it, right? So they're back to 12 again. What did that group look like? A serious progression took place.
We had a lot of good conflict.
They had conflict. They certainly did, but it was good conflict, right? Good, yeah?
They were passionate about what they
Oh, very passionate, yeah.
And they had deep trust in each other.
Deep trust each other, yeah.
They started to really trust and follow their leader instead of interpreting and like basically taking his instruction, interpreting it how they wanted it to be and going forward with it.
Okay, yeah,
Taking
right.
direct instructions from God.
Okay, so prior to crucifixion, not taking instruction well because they had their own idea, preconceived notion what the leader is supposed to be doing, and then but post, understanding what the bigger picture was, taking instruction well, and all focused, like laser focused on what the goal was, right? And what was the goal, by the way?
Take the gospel to the whole
Get the gospel out to the whole world, which, by the way, is your goal, isn't it? What a great goal. Just a little goal. But we've seen it before, right? With the disciples, Waldensians, reformers, early Advent movement. It is absolutely possible.
And also, as it was getting bigger, they didn't try to take on a bigger workload. They delegated.
Aha.
They created subcommittees.
Oh, good. So you're getting into the other part. Yes. Okay. Good. All right. This is good. So yes. So we talked a little bit about motivation. How about delegation? They delegated. I was actually going to ask. I actually had a text ready for that one. What were some of the delegation things they did? Because they took the principle of delegation, which is something hopefully all of you are thinking about. By the way, let's take this time out a second. Is delegation easy? No. Most of us don't trust someone else to do what we think needs to be done. That's the truth. If we look ourselves in the mirror, we say we trust everyone, but we actually have someone else do something that we think needs to get done, we don't trust people. We want to do it ourselves, or we think we should do it ourselves. Delegating is hard. Letting go is hard, isn't it? But think about this. If I can't get past that little speed bump there of being able to delegate, this thing doesn't work real well. Ew. Any of you masters of delegation yet?
Nope.
No, me either. Even at my age, I still do things I probably should delegate to somebody else and give them an opportunity. Because not only, when you delegate, you're not only saying you trust people, you're giving them the opportunity to learn and develop, which is part of the mentoring process, right? So if we want to build great bench strength in AYM, in other words, the next set of leaders after you guys age out, right? After you get to a certain age, you have to go to college and such. Once you age out of AYM, we want to make sure there's not a vacuum of leadership. We want to make sure there's strong leadership. And so doing conferences like this is fantastic. Leadership conferences, mentoring people, delegating them to them, giving an opportunity to learn how to do those skills. If in your own chapter you've got one person that's dominating the chapter and not delegating, that's a problem. Some of you may have seen that already. Okay? You need to work through that somehow. Use some of the tools we talked about today to try to break through that so that you have this great teamwork going on, which will then help build bench strength. All right. So back when I said timeout, what were we talking about?
Talking about subcommittees and different examples of that.
Yeah.
I had one. Think about the situation where we start to really see the humility of Peter and some of the others when they choose Stephen and some of these other upright men to take on a different mission and also to take care of the widows, while some of the other ones went off into other places.
Right. So the disciples picked, was it 6 or 7? I can't remember. Seven, yeah. 7 deacons, Stephen being one, probably the most prominent one that we think of. And that started this whole idea of logistics, yeah, right. And then there was the 70, right? And we saw with Moses, Jethro told Moses burned out. He's like, what in the world? How do I handle all these people? And Jethro's like, hello? You're trying to judge all of them yourself? That's ridiculous. So he appointed judges. And then eventually captains of hundreds and tens and all that kind of stuff. Delegation. Good. All right, so we see great biblical principles on leadership. In fact, in my leadership class, which I taught for a few years, we took a whole section and forgot about the textbook, put all that aside, and literally just went through the major principles of leadership as outlined in the Bible. It's ridiculous. I mean, you could spend, well, the rest of your life doing that. Because the Bible has great leadership principles, great teamwork principles, great business principles, great organizational principles, everywhere you turn, and multiple examples of pretty much everything. All right. Good? How are we doing on time? Ooh.
We can do 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes?
We have a 30-minute break. We're planning to break.
Okay. So should we do some marketing for 10 minutes?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so marketing. What do we think of when we think of marketing? Switching gears a little bit. Sorry?
Get it out there.
Okay, thank you. Right, in a word, advertising, right? So when we think of marketing, everybody, not everybody, probably 90% of people think of advertising, getting people to find us. Really important part of marketing. It's one piece of marketing. Marketing actually is a much bigger world. Marketing, oh, so we have the marketing major back here, by the way. Did you know Mrs. Meinhardt is a marketing major? You got it. Yeah. You tap into her, just get some consulting going. So marketing is involved in strategy. Strategy of the organization. So you guys have done strategic planning. In fact, you're doing some this afternoon. I mean, not this afternoon, this morning after this session. Strategic planning, if done well, is done from the marketing level. In other words, marketing, it's a marketing-driven organization. I'm tripping over myself here. Let me use an example. Back about 30 or 40 years ago in this country, most businesses were engineering-driven. Engineering-driven. Engineers would come up with some really cool stuff. They didn't know if anybody wanted to buy it or not, but it was cool stuff. And then that's what the company sold. That happened for decades. Then someone gets this idea, maybe we should find out what people actually need and build that instead. Right? So marketers start doing surveys, research, focus groups, going to industry, expos and conferences and understanding what do they think they want? Or maybe looking at pain points, right? A pain point being something that in our lives that doesn't work very well, and how can I solve that pain point for somebody? And if I make a product that solves the pain point, they're going to buy the product. Okay? Apple's a great example of this. Apple did it so well that they gave us a product we didn't even know we needed. Right? And now we can't. They told us, yeah.
And we believe them.
But we did have pain points. We needed to have a place to put our addresses instead of a Rolodex, which is kind of bulky. You can't really put in your pocket. You ever seen a Rolodex? Oh, good, okay. And we needed a way to call each other instead of just on a landline with the cord from the house, right? That was helpful. And maybe we get lost pretty easy, so we needed some map stuff. And you get the idea. So Apple, and then the music things. They start with the iPod, and next thing you know, it's a phone, and we can't live without the phone now, at all. If you're wondering if you can live without the phone, put your phone in a drawer for a few hours, and you'll start getting the shakes, and you'll start getting, right? We can't live without the phone. So Apple did it. So that was Apple, by the way, is a marketing-driven corporation. In fact, I'll make a strong statement. Apple's number one core competency is not making technology; it's actually marketing.
Oh, I believe that.
Great marketing organization. They make fantastic technology, but they're a marketing organization at their core. Steve Jobs was master at that. All right, good. So we build a marketing strategy based on what people need. Then there are 4 parts of marketing. Advertising is definitely one of them. Super important advertising. People got to be able to find us. But the first part of marketing is product or service. Either one, product or service. Does AIM have a service or product?
Oh, we have one. It's biannual retreats.
Okay. All right, so biannual retreats are part of, absolutely, that's a place where everybody comes together, yeah? Good. We could define that more. I'll let you guys do that in your planning sessions. But AIM definitely has a product and or service. That's the first, we call them the 4 P's of marketing. P number 1, product. P number 2 is price. Price. What's the price for something? Well, you're not selling things. You're more of a nonprofit. But the bakery, you guys are going through this right now, right? What price are we going to put on our product? A price that's going to tell people this is a premium product, not a premium product, whatever, price that they're going to buy at, okay, and not say, well, that's too expensive or whatever. And we don't want to put too cheap because then we're perceived as poor quality. But the right price for the product, okay? So we'll create a product, put the right price on it. The next one is placement, sometimes called distribution. How do people find our product? Well, that's relevant to you folks. How do people find the AIM product? Okay? If I'm buying Little Debbie's, because we live near Little Debbie down there, they're everywhere, aren't they? You go in a grocery store, and they're there. And where are they usually at?
Yeah, up front.
Okay, you'll find them up by the checkout counter. If you go on the main aisle, are they low on the shelf where people can't see them? No. In fact, they got the whole end cap. So when you've got your little grocery cart and Junior's in the front here, he's looking at the Little Debbie's as you walk all the way around the end cap. That's right? So it's more than just going right by them. It's all the way around. That's on purpose. They pay extra for that, okay? That's placement. How do people find us? How are people going to find the Wonderful Bread Company, right? How are people going to find it? And then the fourth P is promotion. That's the advertising piece, promotion. So great marketing has to take all those into account. As AIM, what is our product? What is our price for the product? Well, in this case, it's not so much money related, but it might be more commitment related. What is our placement? How do people find us? Can they find us easily? Do we have a nice website? Do we have some social media that they can find? Is great word of mouth, right? How do they find us? And then that also ties a little bit in with the promotion side. So those kind of cross over a little bit in this case. So there can be some crossover. Okay, marketing. I had a couple of notes here. Yeah, so I'll close on this concept. Super important concept. As you think about strategic planning in any organization, including this one, what is our value proposition? What is the compelling reason people should choose what we are offering? An organization has to be able to answer that question and answer it well. If I don't have a compelling reason for people to buy my product or my service or join my group, why would they do it? You know, why would we be surprised when they don't? Right? So what is the compelling reason? What's the value proposition? Once you have that, now you know what product to build. Now you know how to market it, how to sell the product, all that kind of stuff, because you can convey that message. Yeah. That's marketing in a nutshell. One last part I think you'd asked me to talk about is how do we get repeat customers? How do people keep coming back? Help me out with that one. How do people coming back? How do people keep coming back for what we're offering?
They really liked what they experienced or what they had, and so they liked it enough to want to come and re-experience it.
Okay, the experience was so compelling, they want to come back for more of it.
Also, the service was not a one and done type of service.
Okay. Oh,
There's a reason to come back.
Yes, we could talk about this for the next hour or so. There's transaction-based relationship, or transaction-based transactions, and there's relationship management, right? So instead of just being a transaction, I'm going to sell you a car, then I'm going to go back and eat my coffee and donuts, or I'm going to sell you this and then hope to never see you again. No, it's relationship. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. What's your dream? What would it look like for us to be able to help you fulfill that dream, et cetera, et cetera? You're building relationship, which, by the way, works really well here too, doesn't it? You don't want to be a transaction team player. You want to be a relationship team player. Okay, these are all great answers. You do that really well, people keep coming back again and again.
So the business side would be is opportunity for investment, and here is opportunity for, opportunity for opportunity sounds weird, but the opportunity to be involved, is really
Okay.
in the event.
Okay, so one of the compelling reasons to join is because there's opportunity to be involved, right? Yep, very much so. It's bigger than just this transaction. There's a bigger picture. You guys are doing that pretty well, aren't you? I mean, the AIM picture's big. We're going to take the gospel to the world, and we're going to do it in this generation, right? Yeah, that's a big. So if you can really paint that compelling picture to the masses, you've got something. Any questions at all? That was a really fast tour through teamwork and marketing.
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it.
Yeah,
It's
well,
very, very helpful.
Thanks. Yeah, well, us older folk are very excited about what you folk are doing. It's really fantastic. Yeah, it's great. So we're highly supportive. Let me just give you one last tip. Don't be afraid to ask people that have experience to help you with stuff. When you're in high school and college, you can open up any door, man. You can talk to executives, people in high positions, people that normally would charge thousands of dollars for their services, and they'll do it for free because they want to help you. Right? When you get to my age, I got to pay for it. So as you continue to develop this organization and maybe your own personal aspirations in your careers, take advantage of it. I always told my college students, if you want to learn about how things are done, get a couple good mentors. Find a couple people that you know you can trust, that are on a path that you God's leading you down. Take them to lunch, pick their brains, that kind of thing. They'll be happy to help. Happy to help. So we're happy to help, right? Yeah. All right. Good. All right. You're welcome.
Thank you.
That was some good food. What do you think? Yeah? All right. So we're going to take a short break here for 15 minutes, and then we're going to meet on the tables here. We're going to get practical. So we're going to be talking about how we can apply some of these principles to AIM, and we're going to pitch some ideas that we can work on, and we can, beat up a little bit and talk about how those are going to work. And we can just make decisions together as a team and also brainstorm on a bigger proposition that with stuff we learned today is a good foundation to start thinking this through and how this could work, okay? So for those joining on live stream, thank you so much for joining. The next session is going to be on Zoom. You'll see that Zoom link in the same description that has also the live stream link. So look forward to you joining on there. And depending on how many of you guys join, we'll split up in some computers. You'll get into some small groups. And the reason why we want you to join on Zoom is so you can also be part of the discussion, part of the feedback. So looking forward to have you there.